All right, everybody, and this is Alan Newell, and I'm coming to you today with a special guest, Mr. Eddie Stone, and we're excited to talk to you today about building your network marketing business, building your team. And right now it is April the 21st, and there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world. There's a lot of stuff going on in the community with your children, with your kids. So, I hear people talking about getting back to what's normal. And I'm not sure, Eddie, that we'll see normal what we thought it was again.
We might have to adjust to a new normal. Now, maybe that new normal will be somewhat like the old normal, but at least until probably there's, what do you think, a therapeutic treatment or a vaccine, which doesn't seem like it's right around the corner. We're probably going to be in a bit of flux here on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. Yeah, and some things are starting to reopen, and some things not. And so, but the fact of the matter is that our business, the direct sales business, our business is absolutely exploding. And how much would you attribute that to what's going on right now?
Well, a lot. I'll be honest with you. I think it would be foolish to say that the current, heightened concerns people have about their health and their immune system aren't driving people to really think about it, really think about what their habits are, what they're doing, got kind of this invisible predator out there. And it seems like the more vulnerable you are from a health standpoint, the more risk you have, right? And so everybody's, I think rightfully so, paying attention to these issues. I was on a call with industry executives last week, and sort of people just sort of dialoguing back and forth, sharing some information. And a lot of companies that are focused on health, that's a priority for them. And then, I guess this is my own observation, but the ones I think that have more of a legitimate, set of products, clean products, really almost had an explosive month like ours. Our month last month, the history of our company, it was the biggest month we've ever had in every marketplace around the globe. And when I say that, I mean in Italy and Spain, where in the month of March and the start of April, just terrible circumstances and human tragedy.
Yeah.
And in the UK, which to start of this month is really seeing their own issues. Of course, we've been having this issue up in New York, but just explosive. And so there's a lot of reasons, and it's more than just buying products for personal use. There's clearly people out there getting involved from a business standpoint. I've got some opinions about that, but there's no question that that's what the circumstances are and what's happening right now on the ground. Yesterday, the 20th of the month, right? Single biggest 20th we've had in the history of this company.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of compelling reasons, but it's driving people to think about these things.
And it's interesting because you're right. If we look at what people look at with the direct sales business, the 80-15-5 rule, there's 80% of your team per se, your business, that are truly customers. They're there to support. They love the products. They love the results. They love the community that they're involved in.
Sure.
And so we see some of them now, because they've gotten such benefits from the products, actually sharing some information with some other people. It's kind of ironic when you look and see, you go, oh, there's Mary. And I haven't seen Mary. She's just been enjoying the products for the last year, and now she's sharing it with someone too. And then there's the 15% who, they're happy making, $500 to $2,000 to $3,000 a month, and they kind of get in there and cruise along. And then there's the 5% that are the real, they want to make multi-six-figure incomes. And what I'm seeing though is kind of with the 15%ers is they're somewhat hesitant. They're in a situation where they feel like that, indecisiveness kind of has gotten them a little bit concerned and frozen. They're so worried about saying the right thing because they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, or they don't want to sound like they're trying to get somebody into a business because of the situation we're in. And so can you touch base a little bit on that?
Yeah, and let me just go back to your comment about what you're seeing with some of the customers. So we sort of have these loose categories at the company when we look at the data, and we've got people that are what I call they're active passive. They're just kind of consumers, right? And that's just it, right? They stop by the store and they buy something. So we have seen this migration where a lot of those people feel compelled, I'm assuming that's the best way I would describe it, to be active advocates. And they want to tell people about it. And that's played a role in what we've seen in terms of kind of a surge of business. And it's interesting to see, but I think it makes sense to me, right? If I feel empowered, I've been learning about my health, I've been learning about what I eat, I've been learning to push away ultra processed food. I mean, all these things, if you're reading our blogs and, you're kind of buying into this education we're working to provide, and you see people that feel threatened, you can kind of see them say, hey, you know what, I'm going to tell some folks, I got a good thing here and I want to share that. To your point though, about people and how they react. And I don't know that for most people, they think about whether I'm a 15% or 80% or 5%, right? It's kind of a category your behavior might put you in, but I don't know if people think about this, but I've got some personal experience with this. I was actively involved in developing a network when 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
Which was, for me, at my age of 57, it's the closest thing I can kind of describe in terms of this jarring moment in time. But of course, as jarring as it was, it didn't have the length, right? It didn't last quite as long. So what I remember from there are definitely people, and this is no fault of anybody, but I do want to say to people to kind of think about these things. They really hit the pause button for a really long period of time. Maybe they just felt like they needed to digest it for a longer period of time, or kind of whatever that happens to be. And so they did that, and I don't know if ultimately when it was over and we moved through that crisis, how they felt like things turned out for them. So everybody's got to make these own decisions. But here's what I know today. If you look at our population, if you say in the U.S., the 300 million or so people that we've got, if we look at how many people are sort of working adults, there's no question we've got a lot of people that have lost their jobs. But for a lot of them, they can see as soon as things sort of feel safe again, the nail salon, the hair salon, people are going to go back and get haircuts, right? It may not happen as quick as it once was. They're going to want to get their nails done, or the gym's going to open back up. People are probably tired of their own cooking. So as soon as there's a good positive green light, they're going to want to go out to eat, right? And so we can kind of see how some of that employment would come back pretty quickly. But all of that is to say that there's a lot of people that haven't suffered that kind of loss. They're still there in this economy. There are millions, and I mean millions of people in this country and around the world working successfully from home. I mean, one of the biggest changes I think is going to happen is you're going to have some people that have a lot of office space that are going to go, I don't know if I need all this office space. I got a lot of people working from home, and one of the positive side effects is going to be they found out they could really function quite well. They like the lifestyle. You can see employers that in the past, everybody rolled into the office 5 days a week that might go, you know what, we're going to work, stagger it 2 days a week, whatever it happens to be. Those individuals are also, though, probably more heightened in terms of their, I don't want to know if I want to call it concern, but the recognition that there's uncertainty, and security can be fleeting, right? Your work, the security of your work can be fleeting. We certainly saw that in the 80s and 90s, didn't we? With companies being shut down, layoffs and things like that. And probably realizing, you know what, the idea of a side hustle, right, to kind of borrow the terms being used today, can be important. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've seen this sort of skyrocket in people becoming VBOs and getting involved, because they realize, you know what, I can sit around and sort of wait for things to be over. But what if that's 12, 18, what if it's 24 months before we find a solution that gives us all the confidence to robustly jump back out there, right? Right. And so can you afford to sit around and do that? And so when I think about my own past behaviors, and then I think about some of the calls and things I've been on, you got to have the courage to realize those concerns you have, the reasons you want to be involved in this enterprise and have this home-based business. Maybe it's in addition to your current work, or instead of, right? The people around you feel the same way. The reasons you're attracted to this, the freedom to work at home, the flexibility to maybe not be so dependent on some of the economic environment now, everybody feels that same way. It's just a question of having that sincere conversation, learning how to say, hey, listen, I don't want to assume anything on your behalf. And if you're really having a tough time right now, we can table this conversation, but I'd love to grab a moment from you and share what I'm doing because I'm excited. I think it's complimentary. And I think right now, while there's this extra time, it would be important to have these conversations. Because here's one thing that's true. At least I've found is that people have more time to have these kinds of conversations than really any moment I've ever seen, right? Some of that modern hustle and bustle that zaps the schedule every day is not the same, right?
Yes, it is. And what's funny is that people, it's almost like they are, our business and our approach, our philosophy is invite, share, and connect, or invite, share, and follow up. And so many people feel like, well, things have changed, so maybe I should change my approach. And I look at it like this is, if we were fishing, and living here at the beach, if we're deep sea fishing, and being around here has really been an eye opener for me. My older brother is he's got 3 boats. He's a fisherman. He's got 1 boat to go in the shallows. He's got 1 boat to go here. He's got one that he can take out 50 miles offshore, And so he will say, hey, going fishing in the morning at 4 a.m. if you want to go. The bonita are running like crazy. Hey, if you want to go here, and it's just out of the blue. And so I liken that to what we're doing, but here's the deal, is when he goes out fishing for a bonita, he goes to the same thing. He trolls at the same speed. He uses the same lures. Nothing changes about his technique. It's just a matter of being there when the fish are there and the fish are biting. And right now, people are sitting around going, oh my God, I hope the government sends me a check. And well, I don't want to, and there's never been a better time to say that, we're fishers of men and women, and we're looking for people who are looking for an opportunity. And there's just never been I remember 9/11. I remember the 2008 to 2010 real estate market that crashed. And man, that affected not only the people selling real estate, but the framers, the concrete people, the accessories, the furniture people. There were so many people affected by that. And I know people, and I'm sure you do as well, who at that moment in time totally changed careers, and now they're multi-6-figure income earners in the direct sales business and never look back.
No question about that. So I'll tell you just candidly how I think about this. So I've got a set of goals, right? I wake up with those, and those goals involve the success and the security of my family and my community, right? And they drive me. And so in order for me to accomplish those goals, because of my chosen profession, I'm not going to accomplish those by improving my basketball shot and performing in that way, right? My performance is based upon this business enterprise I'm involved with. And what it really comes down to is the more people I help, the more I'm going to achieve my goals. I mean, it's a very simple equation. So my calculus is based upon how many people can I help? Because if I want people to come back, then I got to make sure I'm making a good quality product.
Right.
If I want people to come back, I got to make sure I got a business that's delivering what they're looking for and providing satisfaction in that regard. So the variables here are how many people are looking. My argument is, regardless of the crisis, there's more people looking than ever before. Now, that doesn't mean that they're always open. So I need to be a good communicator and figure that out and kind of respect where people may be emotionally or whatever. But I'll tell you right now, I've got the courage to make the call. I'm not holding back because I see this as a heightened opportunity more so than ever before, because my basic premise is I've got something that can make a difference. Minimally, in the quality of somebody's health. But frankly, here, marrying that with a chance to have their own business, maybe it's just on the side to protect themselves from economic downturn, which this may turn out to be the most devastating economic downturn you and I've ever lived to, right? So increasing. So, when I look at that way, I've got to be sensitive in my conversations, but my conversation's not changing.
Yes.
And now more than ever for me, maybe this is just the way I'm built, right? But the variable here is activity rate.
Yes.
And so maybe I have to do a little more because there's a little more confusion out there. I've got to make a few more phone calls to accomplish this thing, or maybe it's not that way. Maybe it's the other way. Maybe there's so much confusion out there. If I learn my conversations the right way, my activity rate achieves more. But either way, that's the great variable. That's the wild card for each individual person. It isn't so much about your skill. I can tell you right now, if you're sincere, right? If you're sincere in your conversations, if you're a good listener, you couple that with an activity rate that matches your goals, and you can achieve more in this moment than you probably can otherwise. And there's nothing wrong with that, because we're making a contribution here. Maybe everybody won't see it that way, but there's no question that opportunity exists, right? And so in that regard, I don't think anything changes. And the process, which, you've been on these calls with me before, the process is the most sort of dynamic issue here. Following that process, say, hey, listen, I don't want to assume anything, but I've got something. I want to grab a few minutes of your time. And you use those tools.
Absolutely.
Right? You take them right to that collaboration page and you show them what you've got. You show them that little animated video, that couple-minute video, and you say, hey, listen, this is the company that I'm working with, and hopefully you can kind of see why, the spirit and the intent of what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
And if that response is favorable, you just go right down that page and you say, let me show you how they've set their business up. And you show that video about how the compensation program works, right? So none of that changes, right? And in fact, I think for a lot of people listening to us, they probably got a little more time on their hands than ever before. That's an opportunity, right? I'm not a Netflix and chill.
Right.
Right. That's not where my head's at this moment in time right now. Right. I see this as spring, just like the farmers do, and it's time to plant.
That's right.
And we're going to harvest down the road. How much we harvest, you and I, we don't know exactly, but I'm spreading seeds.
And to tag on to that, you talked about that and being humble, but vulnerability and honesty right now.
Yeah.
Is so important, because when you look at the statistics, the number one Googled phrase last week was work from home.
There you
Work
go.
from home. It's amazing. And making money from home. And it's just surprising that there are so many people that are reaching out. And if we go to them and be humble, and you may not have a story to tell if you're brand new in this, because I hear a lot of people say, yeah, but that takes too long and I need money now. And I was talking to a lady just this morning and I said, so I totally understand that. I said, I've been in that same situation myself. It was several years ago when I needed to make money now. And I said, so let's just look at that and see what your options are. What are the options? A lot of people, I was in the restaurant business for many, many years. And we would have single moms. We would have dads. We would have people come to get a job with us, and they wanted to wait tables because that was quick cash.
Yeah.
They could put money, they could come in, wait tables, and put $50 in their pocket today. And I said to her, and so I said, no, with our enrollment bonus, our referral bonus, if you just find 10 people who are just like you, and she said, well, what story do I tell them? I've never done this. I don't know what you mean telling the story. So what would you tell this young lady that her story is and how to share that?
I would say, hey, listen, I've stumbled across something that's really caught my attention. Rather than me trying to fully explain that, are you in front of your computer?
Yeah.
I want you to go to thegoodinside.com, and you see that middle tab that says collaborate. I want you to click on that. I want you to watch this little, just 2 minute animated piece that I think will give you the full explanation. right? And then you tell somebody why you're attracted to that message. It's pretty simple. I like the idea of clean. I like the idea in this moment of being healthy, right? Does that make sense to you? And then you continue to go down the page. So it isn't about that, hey, I got involved 2 weeks ago and made X amount of money. And frankly, if somebody tried to share a message with me like that, I'd be suspicious.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I believe that's how things work, right? There's a little bit of a process that's got to take place. Even still, just like you've described, if I have success today, if I have success tomorrow and Friday, next Friday, I'm going to get paid. I don't know that there's a more efficient means of getting that to people, right? You've got people out there that are still waiting on stimulus checks or whatever because the systems aren't kind of built to deal with it. Ours is, right? We've got a system built to respond in that fashion.
Yeah, a system built that in 1 week, you could have, depending on how hard you wanted to work. If you're unemployed and you were working 8 hours a day and for 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, if you spent that time being coachable and just following the directions, and let's just say that, 40 hours, how many people could you contact in 40 hours? If they got, 10 people to enroll with an Advantage pack like themselves, that's $1,250. That's more than the average rent. The average rent is like $1,175. So in 1 week, if they treat this, it's funny. You've heard this before, and I think this is where people get confused. Is about are you a full-time networker? If you want full-time pay, you have to work full-time. If you want part-time pay, you work part-time. And it's no different here. And so for those people that are out of work, I think that it's important for them to be able to know, and not only just the new ones, but some of our people who have been around for a while, what does it take to be successful working from home? What kind of regiment do you have to have when it comes to scheduling your time?
Well, I'll tell you the biggest thing for me in that regard is to have a plan of some kind. One person's plan doesn't have to be another person's plan. But if you don't plan when and where you're going to work in your house, no work gets done. Right? So I think where things don't work out for them is they don't think about that. They think, well, I'll go and do it. But they haven't thought, where might I find a place that's at least modestly controlled in terms of the volume so I can make my phone call or listen to someone. And I don't think it has to be totally quiet. And in fact, if there's kids running around when you're working from home, that's okay too, right? You want to manage the chaos, but if there's a little bit of chaos, that's okay. But you've got to think that through. And so I always found it beneficial for me to figure out in my day where I was going to work. And if I'm working from home and Maria's here and the kids were here, Sawyer and Ethan were here, then I'd say, hey, Dad's going to be at the dining room table, or he's going to be in the garage, or he's going to be in the bedroom, or he's going to be wherever it is that he thinks he's got to have the peace of mind to do his work. And that comes from just thinking about it, realizing that you're not the only one occupying the space. And so if you find yourself trying to sit in the kitchen where everybody else is at, constantly going, shh, that doesn't work out, right? And just doesn't make you feel good and or anybody else enjoy your company in that moment, right? So I think you have an obligation to think about where in the house, without disturbing the flow of the house, can I go to do my thing? That's sort of that first dynamic for me. And then to realize that when you get ready to do your thing has very little to do with organization, and it has everything to do with talking to people.
Right.
You find yourself getting ready to work, and 2 hours later, you're still organizing your names or numbers or whatever. You've not done the work you need to do. So first things first, take your smartphone and look at your list of favorites and start there, right? Don't overthink this thing, right? Because your pay time, I call it, I learned that term years ago. My pay time comes from talking to people. That's sort of professionally what I get paid for, is to talk with folks, answer questions, talk to the subjects that they're have an interest in, and there'll probably be some follow-up that comes from that. But pay time is the conversation. And the more conversations I have, the more success, which comes from more people I'm able to help in whatever way they want to be helped, whether that's from a health standpoint or from a business standpoint. And every conversation isn't always one that finishes with, a transaction. That's okay too. I don't start out thinking about that transaction. I want a transaction to occur, but I start out with that conversation to see where somebody's at and go from there, right? And so that's if you're trying to think, okay, what do I do with my time? Find a place to start having phone calls with people. If you can have a computer in front of you and have them be on the internet at the same time, all the better and more effective.
And it's funny, I remember when we were talking about the comp plan here and how it worked, and I have been with other companies before, and I remember a statement that you said to me that just made so much sense. People train on this, but when you made that statement, and I then I went back and visited the comp plan, I said, that's exactly what he's doing. You said, Alan, people will do what you pay them to do, and this compensation plan is designed for that new person to go out and bring people on and make some money in the front quickly. And then the long-term residual on the back end is as they built that team and they continue to do that, it flows in as well. And so, getting up in the morning and getting a shower and getting dressed like you're going to work, because you are, planning around what, I'm going to work until this time. And so many people, social media, and I think we'll end with this thought, with this comment. I want your feedback on this. Is social media is one of the best things to happen to the direct sales industry, and it's probably the worst thing that's ever happened to the direct sales industry, because it's so easy to get caught up in being a watcher and not utilizing it for what if you're trying to build a business and try to build an income, has. And so many people abuse it that it's almost made it the industry bad. With what we have to offer and the social media aspect of it, and I know that Touchstone is very active on social media. I know the company is very supportive, and our marketing department puts out so much high quality information. What's your advice for members who are trying to build and how they should be using social media?
Well, I go back to sort of the same conversation or strategy I have about working from home, and might sound a little bit boring to people, but everything for me, there's a plan to it. So if I'm going to look at Facebook or Instagram or whatever it happens to be, and I think it has an application to my business, when I go to it, I'm going to separate when I go to it that it's social or entertaining. There are times when something like Facebook or Instagram is a social or an entertaining enterprise for me, where I'm looking at some old friends from high school or college. I'm kind of keeping up with what they're doing and enjoying seeing their kids or whatever that happens to be. That isn't the same as when I'm using that medium to develop my business. And so I make a very distinct and consciousness to not let myself get caught up in entertainment or socializing, when what this moment was designed to be for me was about business development. And so then it's about the conversations. And so I use direct messaging. You see somebody you want to have a dialogue with, you say, hey, listen, Alan, I saw you and the kids grabbing ice cream this past weekend, whatever. I guess that's not true right now, right? So that's not the current moment, but whatever it happens to be, I saw you post where you were playing basketball with the kids in the backyard, whatever happens to be, and say, hey, listen, it made me think we haven't talked in forever. I've stumbled across something. I'd love to have just a brief conversation with you, right? Set up a dialogue. You can also do that with a text. I know you're a master at sending out text messages, and you're forward and you say, hey, listen, I've got something here. I'd love to grab a couple minutes of your time. I think people appreciate when you're really upfront about that, right? Yeah. What I don't like is when somebody sends me a message that says, hey, how are you today? Because I just know there's more to it than that, right? I'd rather say, I don't mind the conversation. I just want you to tell me what I need to, because for me, I have a specific thing that I'm doing. And so for people on social media, the first thing I would tell you is be purposeful about what the time is for. If the time is for entertainment, then go have fun and let it be entertainment and laugh at cat videos or whatever happens to be. If the time is for developing your business, then it's about establishing dialogue and communication. The other thing, so let's call that social media kind of basic, right? The next level is to think about that your social media develops for you a brand and image, whether you realize it or not. The things that you're liking, loving, posting, sharing create an identity that people have of you, because they can see if they're friends with you, if you've liked or loved something or whatever happens to be. And I'm not trying to tell anybody how to do anything, right? So your social media could be a representation of your politics. That's perfectly fine. There's a lot of people that use it that way, but just know that identifies and creates a brand for you with everybody from friends to family, whether you intend for that to or not. In the same way, it can also show people what your hobbies or interests are. So if you've shared one of our pieces about avoiding artificial sweeteners, right? It says in a very, very subtle way, oh, Alan must be paying attention to his health or whatever it happens to be. If there's a continuity to that messaging over weeks, months, at this point, years, if you happen to speak to someone about a health message or something you've discovered or something you're excited about in that regard, it's not going to surprise them. You know, I've noticed you posting about greens drinks or whatever it happens to be. So there's an identity that you create, and you have to keep that in mind. If you don't care about that identity, if you don't care if it's inconsistent, whatever that happens to be, I'm not trying to tell you to, I'm just telling you that's what happens, whether you acknowledge it or not. And so one is, when it's time to work, what's the purpose? It's a dialogue. Two, just remember what you do creates an identity for yourself. I would rather, the way I think about things, I would rather actively think about the identity I'm creating, since I use this medium for my business, than haphazardly approach it. And I'm conscious of that with no apologies. That's how I look at it. It's a professional working environment for me, and I want to behave that way when I'm there and treat it that way.
And you know, it's interesting you say that, because I've had people call me up and talk to me and hadn't talked to you in a while, and maybe their son played football for me when I was coaching 7-8 years ago. And they say, you know, I see that you are now a vegan, which I'm not. And nothing wrong with being a vegan if that's what you choose, because you promote so much green, healthy stuff, they just assume. And people know what we're doing. Yeah. You know, they know what type of business we're in. It's so important now to, as you said, schedule your time. I'm going to talk to so many people today, because how many people are out there looking for that opportunity that'll pay the, you know, we used to talk about, and this is still so important. We're selling time freedom. We're selling the ability for people to live a healthy life through healthy products. Somebody said to me the other day, I heard you said that you got to have a product that makes a difference in people's lives. I looked at your shopping cart, I looked at your products, and I love them. And I said, great, let me share you another product that we have that is changing lives too. And I sent him to the Collaborate page, Visionary Business Owner. And I said, now the first one's going to talk about the product, but the other product that we have that's changing lives is the ability for somebody to earn an income and to be able to have the time that they want.
Oh, I agree. I know that was the last question. I just want to, one final comment on my part here. I don't believe you can sell somebody on these ideas. I just don't. Right. If you're either concerned and interested in going out of your way to eat better, to be more healthy, or you're not, that motivation is either intrinsically there or not. Now, you may along the way become more motivated because you had open heart surgery or whatever happens to be, but I can't control that, right? What I'm trying to do is to find out who's looking. And I've learned, at least in my success comes from determining pretty quickly, is someone looking, and if they are, what are their questions and how might I answer them? But if there's no interest, the most inefficient thing I can do is try to talk some people into having interest, right? I'm not trying to convince somebody to stop smoking, start exercising. I'm only looking for the person that says, man, I just have not been on the track I need to be on. I need to get on that track. Tell me about yours.
That's right.
That's right. So I'm not, and they're either thinking about financial security or financial wealth or health, financial health, or they're not. I'm not trying to motivate them to.
That's
I'm
right.
only looking for the people that are looking. And the minute I digested that, I was no longer concerned or bothered by the outcome, because my job was just to say, hey, are you looking?
Yeah.
And if you're not, that's perfectly fine.
And that's so important. And then in addition to that, if you notice when people come on that are brand new, they'll go out and they'll enroll 6, 7, 8, 9 people real quickly. And it's not because they are very smart and intelligent and understand the system. It's they're excited, they're enthusiastic, and they believe in it. And that's so important. It's like you said, we're looking for people who are looking. And that new person just gets so excited that they run. You can't say the wrong thing to the right person.
That's right.
If they're looking for an opportunity, we'd love to partner with them. And if they're not, that's okay too.
Yep.
That's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, listen, Eddie, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it. And
Thank
for
you,
those
Alan.
of you tuning in, I didn't do a great introduction of Eddie, but Eddie's been in this industry for quite a few years, and almost 30. And he started out just like you and I, as a member, as a builder. Started from square one. It was him and his wife. And he said, here we go. And he enrolled his first person.
Yep.
And he's had great success over the years from doing that. And the beautiful thing I love about being a partner with him here at Touchstone Essentials and the company that he has created is he understands and truly knows what it's like for us to be in the trenches, to be out there, to be that brand new person. And the way that the marketing system is with our company, the compensation plan, the tools that we provide for you to build a business, it doesn't get any easier than this. So Eddie, thank you for tuning in.
Thank you for having me, Alan.
Look forward to sharing for this, and I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, brother. Bye-bye.